Chapter 1E is called the enrichment chapter because it discusses the different types of consumer behavior research methods and how the insights collected from primary and secondary data inform firms in terms of developing a customer-oriented marketing strategy. There are two types of data that can inform consumer insights. One is primary and the second is secondary. Interestingly, usually in terms of collecting data, secondary data is collected first, meaning that this is data that already exists that may help to guide and inform what areas of primary data may be beneficial in order to collect. Another approach is to collect secondary data first, and that again is research that has already been collected by someone else, probably for a different type of research purpose. The census is an example of a popular form of secondary data utilized by many marketing firms to find out what do we already know, what knowledge already exists, and then for primary, what new research or what new information do we still need to find out in order to best guide decisions in terms of strategy. So secondary, what's already known to guide primary data, and then primary to cover additional consumer insights. Firms who collect primary data generally keep that very close. It's private, confidential data. So you're not going to see a lot of primary data collected by firms broadcasted or publicly shared for obvious competitive reasons. Here are some examples of different types of secondary data sources, and later in the term you will actually be engaged in a secondary data source exercise. When we're talking about research and collecting insights, one of the things to keep in mind is that a variable is anything that varies. So there's lots of different types of marketing variables that can be used or examined or studied within marketing. An example, particularly in the online context, it could be the number of new visitors to a website, and that could be a proxy for understanding how well is awareness with new consumers gaining based upon whatever efforts a firm may be putting out there. Another typical transaction that's calculated or that's collected, especially through loyalty cards, is the average spend per transaction, because you're there at the register, they swipe your card, they're collecting that information, and they're matching that information or your actual consumer behavior or spend data along with the personal information that you provided when you set up that particular loyalty card or reward program. Perceptions of the store environment, this can be collected through post surveys, behavioral intentions, these are types of questions, as well as looking at what consumers post online. This is very popular. This is something that's widely utilized by many firms. For firms that don't have the resources in-house, it's not uncommon for firms to actually go out and outsource these particular types of services, as demonstrated here. What you need to be familiar with in terms of the first part of this chapter is to go through and read the examples of the different types of consumer behavior research methods. There are particular strengths as well as weaknesses to each, and there are appropriate methods to employ depending upon the type of research question asked or the type of information that people want to collect. Here's an example of a survey that was actually facilitated on behalf or for REI on behalf of BizRate, and this was an example of a survey that was sent to me after I made an online purchase through REI. Another example can be interviews. Again, another form of communication or a way of soliciting or getting data. As well as experiments. You can do field experiments. You can look at taste tests. Field experiments are actually conducted in the field, out in the marketplace. And here are some examples that you can kind of scroll through.